Thanks for showing up today. I'm glad we can talk about this great documentary.
Thanks,
Thank
David,
you.
for having us on.
Yeah. So I guess we could start by saying that, Michael, this kind of started with you, I imagine, with you approaching James. Can you talk a little bit about kind of going back with your connection with Gregg, your tight connection with Gregg, and then also obviously we know why you chose James because it's such a great documentary, but let's talk about how you approached him.
Sure. So going back, I started guiding Gregg's career in 2004. We met, and Gregg, fortunately for me, decided to bring me on board as part of his team. And during that period of time, we created a really wonderful body of work. We recorded two studio albums, two live albums, some visual material, the autobiography that was a number two New York Times best-selling book. And then, Gregg's life's journey took a turn when he became sick. And during that time, we started thinking about celebrating his legacy and the need to do it while he was alive versus already gone. And we created two beautiful concerts, which also we had a lot of interviews from. Um, Called All My Friends, and which took place at the Fox Theater in Atlanta, Georgia, and then back to Macon at the historic Grand Opera House, where we'll be screening tonight. And after Gregg passed, I felt like I wanted the world to experience who Gregg really was. And because we all know the public persona out there on stage performing his songs and hits, and some people called him a rock star. Some people called him larger in life. Some people, thought he was an incredible singer and part of the Allman Brothers Band. But there was a beautiful side that I felt the world did not know, and that I wanted to get across, which was the Gregg that I knew, the shy, Southern, kind gentleman that was damaged, wounded, and which we all obviously have damage and wounds, and but his story was spectacular, and because he was out there in the face of the public, never really was fully shown. And so after his passing, I wanted to try to bring that to the screens. I met a bunch of directors, and thankfully, I was introduced to James. And when James and I spoke and subsequently met, I really almost knew instantly that James was the only person to tell the story based on so many things for me. But his entry point when he started talking about his own brother Stacy and their relationship, and I knew only through Gregg, obviously, about Gregg's relationship with Duane, and I thought there were a lot of similarities from where they both were from, sort of in the South, to the relationship with brothers, and it was an obvious choice, and I'm so grateful that James has now created a beautiful documentary telling the story.
James, I didn't realize how attached you were to so many of the great music documentaries in the last, like, I don't know, 15 years with Glenn Campbell, Linda Ronstadt, David Crosby. I've I've shown and discussed many of those movies in my film group. So I like I said, it seems like a no brainer for you to move on to Gregg Allman, but you weren't as big as I wouldn't say you weren't a fan of the music, but you weren't a diehard fan. You weren't, as close as Michael was. So what drew you to coming up with this documentary here?
Well, I think one of the Michael is absolutely right. Um, my brother, my relationship, I'm really tight with my brother, and we've worked together over the years, and I know what that's like. And my brother was responsible for me ever becoming a director or an actor. I mean, he said, "You need to do this. You're really good." Just as Duane did that with Gregg. So I mean, I had this complete identification with their relationship, and the thought of losing my brother at any time, especially at that age, was a devastating loss. And part of it too. I mean, I haven't said this before, but I think one of the other reasons I wanted to do it was because I felt like Michael would allow me to tell the truth. That if that was something, when you go into films like this, a lot of times there's people that are they're guards, and there are people that that want to keep you away from telling the story, the true story. And, Gregg had a lot of bumps on the road, and but Gregg himself didn't shy away from them, and so the more research I did on it, the more I wanted to do it, and it's been a labor of love, a long labor of love. And it wasn't just the brotherhood, it was also the integration part. As Michael said, Gregg and I, we all came from southern roots, and I came from a little town in Texas that was segregated, and it always bothered me, and I had such admiration for Gregg standing up against the powers that be in the South, in Georgia at that time, and a lot of America, not just the South, the North too. Segregation didn't come until the mid '60s, and anyway, and having an integrated band and not seeing color and having the influence of Floyd Miles and Hank Moore and those folks, at Otis Redding, and Gregg acknowledging that that's where his soul roots came from. It was all great for the opportunity to make a movie, and not to mention the conflict. And as somebody who teaches film, you know that conflict is everything in a story. If you don't have conflict, you don't have a good story. Well, I think Gregg had a little bit of that.
Right. Right. What are the stakes? What is the conflict? Where is the trauma? We all have it in our life, like Michael said. After I watched the documentary, I watched the trailer. That may sound reverse, but that's how I prefer it. There's a line in the trailer that really struck me, and I wondered if you guys can talk about. It's a line that Gregg says, and I wonder if you guys could talk about what that line means, not just from coming from Gregg, but what that line means to both of you in life or pertaining to Gregg. And he says, you never know how much you're leaning on somebody till they die.
I'll address it in two parts. So speaking for Gregg, obviously I learned from Gregg that his older brother was really, everything. And while they were growing up together and were friends and brothers and competitors and everything in between, they just were. And I don't think you ever think about, the God forbid that something could happen and then someone's taken from you at a point in time. And I think no matter when it is in your life, it's always too young, whether you're 20, 40, 60, 80, or 100, that loss is still a huge loss. And so for me, it's the same thing. I feel the same way. I'm blessed. I have my mother at 90, and I appreciate the relationship that I have with her more probably now than I ever did, and it continues to grow. And part of that is because of the lesson that Gregg taught me, and also the beautiful display of that lesson that James put on the screen for us all to learn from. So you never know. You have to value every day and be grateful for all those relationships.
That was well said, Michael. I think it's living in the moment. I think if we take everything as humans, we take it for granted that we're going to get up tomorrow morning. We take it for granted that our wives, our husbands, our children are going to be okay, that the world's going to be okay, and then the bomb goes off, and you hadn't thought about it, and you hadn't prepared for it. So for me, I think it's an observation of life that now I'm grateful for what I have, and I'm going to celebrate today instead of looking back and having regrets. I mean, we all have regrets, but I think Gregg at the end of his life, and as he got sober, he started living in the moment more. Michael, you can speak to this better than I can, but that's what I got from listening to him over and over again. And that line to me resonates. Be present today, because you don't know what's going to happen.
I feel like there's a bit of a turning point in the documentary, especially after the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Later on, a little bit after that, obviously Gregg had to make some really serious decisions, and Michael, as his friend, was your the beginning of your friendship with him, were you starting to see that he had already changed, or he still making those changes?
I think he was making those changes every day of his life until the end. But I will share with you that yes, when our relationship started, and I felt so lucky for that, he already had beat alcohol dependency and the hardcore drugs that he was exposed to and experiencing. So I got him at a wonderful time where he actually was happy, light, clear-headed, still struggling and wounded as we all are every day, but clear-headed and was enjoying every single day of his life. And even when he had his liver transplant, and unfortunately, shortly thereafter, heard the news that he had liver cancer and dealt with that for a period of time. He always was um, happy, lived in the moment, as James referenced, wanted to get out there and play, whether he was playing with the Allman Brothers Band or playing with his solo band. That was a space that gave him comfort. And I think his voice got sweeter and warmer and more mature and richer as the years went on. And with that clarity, it only got better and better.
Yeah, and I think that's to me, well, that's what I kind of walked away with from this documentary is, I had in my mind an idea of who he was as a musician from his music, and I even thought he killed it as a formidable villain in Rush, the movie from the early '90s. I mean, that was whoa. But yeah, this documentary, I think, really showed the sensitive side, and that he was very much more relatable than probably we ever thought. Um, now, I would imagine though that the 2014 interview was that kind of the impetus of the documentary. I mean, once you had that, did you know where to go after that, James?
Yeah, I mean, when Michael, they did Back to Making, it was an album that they did, and they did this interview for the album, and it sat on the cutting room floor because they only used a little bit of it. Michael said, I said, we need to gather up all the interviews. And when I saw that, I went, holy shit, this is really gold. This is gold. All his interviews were gold. I mean, the guy was so charismatic. It didn't matter what age he was. I mean, he just was just he that thing when you talk about movie stars or stars, they have the it. Gregg was bathed in it, no matter you can see it in all the pictures he ever took. It was just there. But this was revealing and very honest, brutally honest, and I guess this was close to the end of his life, and it had never been seen before. So it was a gold find. And yes, we did base a lot of the he was able to tell his story, but all the other interviews in the movie, I hope that we succeeded in Gregg telling his story as opposed to this being an opinion piece of this is and now we have Gregg Allman and he did this and he did that and he did this and that's not what this movie is. This is him telling us what he did and telling us about different times of his life, and that's what we attempted to accomplish.
Now, was that different for you, James, compared to the other three music documentaries you made? Because at that time, when you were making those subjects were alive, I believe, when you were
Yeah.
making those, and this was different. So, did you have to? I mean, obviously, you had to dig through a lot of archive footage and everything, but how was this definitely different from the other three?
Well, it was certainly different. I wasn't able to talk to Gregg, but I felt like I did.
Hmm.
It's strangely enough, by David, I thought by the end of this experience, I felt like Gregg was my brother. I felt
Hmm.
like, I mean, I knew him that well because he spent that much time in the editing room with him, and it's like he came alive, and he came alive in his music, and uh, and so it was very different in the sense that I was questions I wanted to ask him, but I would ask those questions, and then we would go look for, does he talk about this? Does he talk about that? Does he talk about his, the racism in the South? Does he talk about the loss of his brother? Does he talk about his relationship with women? And so over his life, being in front of the camera at different times, we were able to answer those questions. So it was different
Yeah.
in that sense, instead of asking it directly. So, but
Right.
in the case of Glenn Campbell, Glenn had Alzheimer's, so it was pretty hard to ask him those questions too.
I had to scratch my head afterwards and look it up again. I'm like, wait, Greg did die, right? Because he felt so alive in this documentary, and I'm like, oh yeah, sure enough, 2017. Now I'm in Chicago, and I know you have some roots here. They're gonna be showing this movie at the Music Box Theater. I don't know if you've ever been to the Music Box Theater, but it's going to be it's over 90 years old, and it's a great theater, and we're looking forward to seeing it on the big screen come next Wednesday.
That's the way people should hear music docs. It's in theaters because you can hear that music.
For sure, for sure. Well, I know I probably got to get going here soon, but I really appreciate the time you guys take to talk about this movie. I'm going to be talking about it a lot, and I'm hoping that it gets some more eyes on it, and that it opens some more eyes to it.
And you can check GreggAllmanDocumentary.com, where it'll give you the detail of the 200 theaters across the country that it's opening on June 17th, next Wednesday.
Excellent. Now, are you guys going to be like doing a lot more appearances with it, touring with it, if you will?
I'm going to be in Savannah next Wednesday, where Gregg spent the last 20 years of his life, and we're going to do an opening night of the run there. I'm going to have one of Gregg's Corvettes on site, as well as two of his motorcycles outside the venue. Richard Brent and the Big House Museum are bringing down artifacts from the Big House Museum in Macon, which is the Allman Brothers Band Museum, and there will be artifacts on display, and it's going to be a wonderful night. James, I know, is going to be in LA sharing it with fans and friends and family as well.
Very cool. Well, guys, thanks again. I appreciate your time.